And we are live. Hello, reader friends.
Hello, reader friends. Go ahead, Megan.
Welcome to YGPC Talks with Jim Steyer. I'm Megan.
And I'm Kateri. This is Jim. Welcome, Jim.
Hey, great to be here. Happy Sunday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to read a brief introduction just to get started. So for more than 30 years, Professor Steyer has taught widely popular courses on civil rights, civil liberties, children education issues at Stanford University. He's received a number of teaching honors, including the Walter J. Gores Award for Excellence in Teaching. He's the author of the new book, Which Side of History? How Technology is Reshaping Democracy and Our Lives, as well as Talking Back to Facebook, the common sense guide to raising kids in the digital age, and The Other Parent, the inside story of the media's effect on our children. So welcome, Jim.
Hey, great to be here. Great to be here. Thank you guys.
Yeah, awesome.
You know, Andrew
Thank you for being here.
Andrew is my good friend, and he ran for president against my brother, Tom. So we love the Yang Gang. So happy to see that.
Yeah, we're all just a family now, I think. So
we all went to the same high school. We also went to the same high school. Me and Andrew and Tom, we all went to the same high school. The same high school that, unfortunately, Mark Zuckerberg also went to.
Yeah, this family dynamic is already weird. That's great. Jim, I'm also going to read the description for your book, because that's the main reason why we're here. We are a book club. If you're new here, we are the Yang Gang Book Club. We are born out of the Humanity First movement, so it's our mission to read for humanity. So this is, I'll just get started. In this groundbreaking anthology, notable journalists, engineers, entrepreneurs, novelists, activists, filmmakers, business leaders, scholars, and researchers explore the ethical behavior of big tech, or the lack thereof. Tackling issues around privacy, disinformation, and fake news online, the rise of cyberbullying, climate change, and technology, and the impact of the move fast and break things mentality in tech culture. Correct. Which side of history, how technology is reshaping democracy and our lives, offers opinion leaders and the broader public thought-provoking perspectives and roadmaps for constructive change. With an introduction by James P. Steyer, the founder and CEO of Common Sense Media, this timely book will help shape the conversations we have around technology for years to come. So there's that. What an intro. And the book sounds great. So we're very excited to be able to talk to you about it.
I'm glad to be here. I'm totally psyched to talk to you guys.
Great. So I thought maybe it'd be good to just get started. We just want to get to know you a little better. Could you kind of tell us the story behind the story before we get into the book specifically? We're curious to know also about Common Sense Media. You've also published other books. So just, if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. So Kateri, my day job is I'm the head of Common Sense. I'm the founder and the CEO of Common Sense Media, which is the biggest kids media and advocacy group in the United States, the largest child advocacy group, the biggest kids media and tech group, and really the largest tech advocacy group in the world. So even though I'm a Stanford professor and teaching right now, and Andrew was in my class 2 weeks ago, actually, that was really fun, opening night. My day job is running Common Sense. And for you guys who don't know, so we have about 150 million unique users. We rate, if your parents out there, you probably know Common Sense. We rate every movie, TV, video game, website, app, book, etc. So parents here in the US and around the world know Common Sense as sort of the consumer reports guide of media and tech. We also created the field of digital literacy, digital citizenship in schools in the United States and globally. And we have about 100,000 member schools, about over 1 million teacher members, probably reach 30 million students a year with digital citizenship. So it's a really large nonprofit. And then the third part of the organization is we're the largest child advocacy group and largest tech advocacy group in the United States. So that's my day job, is running Common Sense. And that's what led me to write the book. But my background actually is I was a school teacher in Harlem in the South Bronx and a civil rights lawyer. So when you introduced and said, at Stanford, I'm a professor, I teach civil rights and civil liberties. That's what I used to do, right? I was a civil rights lawyer and child advocate. And then I started Common Sense. I started one large child advocacy group called Children Now. And then 17 years ago, I started Common Sense Media. And then it became a very large organization. Mm-hmm. And about 10 years ago, basically, about 2010 or so, when you guys were probably in grade school or high school, I don't know what you were, but you were not. Anyway, high school. There you go, in Santa Barbara. So then, what happened was, I became really concerned. Common Sense had gotten to be a big organization, right? And by the way, I'm happy to answer questions from the audience about Common Sense, what we do. But the reason I mentioned Mark Zuckerberg is I really started seeing the impact. I'm a child advocate and an educator and a civil rights lawyer. Who cares about kids and poverty issues? And we didn't realize Common Sense Media would become so successful and such a large scale. And about 10 years ago, I started seeing that Facebook in particular, this is before Instagram, guys, and before Snapchat, right? Evan, the guy who started Snapchat, he was my student at Stanford. He's not that old, guys. Anyway, I started getting really concerned about what the social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube and other stuff were doing to kids, quite frankly, and the impact on the social, emotional, and cognitive development of children. And so that was when I wrote my second book. I'd written a book called The Other Parent 17 years ago. That launched Common Sense Media, which is about the impact of media. But in those days, it was movie and TV and video games, right?
Right.
Mark Zuckerberg was in grade school at that point, right? There was no Facebook or Google. Google had just started. And so the thing is, I started seeing two things. One, the incredible impact that the platforms were having on the social, emotional, and cognitive development of children. And I was pretty outraged about it. And second, they were eviscerating privacy rights in the United States. And because I'm a Stanford professor, I know that privacy is a fundamental right. I teach con law to undergrads. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how can you say privacy doesn't matter? How can you say that these issues aren't incredibly important? And at that point, the world was sort of in love with the big tech companies, right? And they could do no wrong, and there was no regulation. And I basically decided with my colleagues at Common Sense, we'd already become the biggest kids in advocacy, the kids tech group in the country, and we're on our way to becoming the biggest child advocacy group. And I just thought someone has to raise the alarm, basically, and say, this is a really big issue. And also, you could see the beginnings of them undermining democratic norms and institutions, too. You could see the potential for these platforms, which were completely unregulated, very different than broadcast and cable TV or radio or print or other forms of publishers. You could see that they could really, if used wrongly, could undermine democracy, could really impact kids in a negative way, and could do lots of good things. But they were making comments all the time, particularly the Facebook guys, about frictionless sharing. Everybody should just open up everything in their lives. And, and by the way, you could see that they were hoovering up my data and your data and my personal information and selling it to advertisers without my knowledge, basically, and to everybody else. And so basically at that point, this is 9 or 10 years ago, we were sort of a lone voice in the wilderness, Common Sense wise, but we were the biggest group in the country. We were the biggest nonprofit. And so over the past 8 to 10 years, it's just been a steady effort to try to educate the public and young people and opinion leaders here in the US and increasingly globally about the impact of technology on our lives. And in a way, which side of history is sort of the culmination of that for me? Because as you mentioned, it's essays by 50 of the smartest people in the world on the topic. And it's everybody from journalists like Kara Swisher or Tom Friedman, Nick Kristof, Cheryl Wu Dunn, Jenna Wortham of the New York Times, people like that, to people like Sacha Baron Cohen and Aaron Sorkin, who wrote The West Wing, to friends of mine. These are all guys I know in my job. To Khaled Hosseini, who wrote Kite Runner and The Splendid Sons, to some of the big thinkers in the tech world like Jaron Lanier or Shoshana Zuboff or Mark Benioff, the founder of Salesforce, or John Hennessy, the board chair at Google, former Stanford president. And then academics like Tim Wu, Willow Bay, the dean of the Annenberg School at USC, and leading advocates like Ellen Pao, who took on Silicon Valley as a woman, Alexander, who wrote The New Jim Crow. And basically, I just asked a bunch of my friends to write pieces, and they did. And that's how the book came about. and it comes out on Tuesday. And the idea is to challenge the tech industry to answer the very fundamental question: which side of history are you guys on? Because right now, it's not clear to me that they're on the right side of history. And here we are in the middle of another election where technology is being used in certain cases to undermine democratic norms and to be a platform for white supremacy and racism and anti-Semitism and hate. I'm the co-founder of this movement called Stop Hate for Profit, along with Sasha Baron Cohen and the ADL and the NAACP and Color of Change. And Andrew's involved in that too. Andrew's been really helpful. And so, this is an incredibly important time for young people in particular, but for all of us to take stock of the impact of tech on our lives. That's why I wrote Which Side of History? Long intro, but that's the story.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect description, really. I think it's really cool that you have.
It's the right question too, Meghin.
It is. Yeah.
It's really the leaders of the industry who are the most powerful, richest, and most powerful corporations probably in the history of the world now. I would say the big ones, the tech guys are. Which side of history do you guys want to be on? Because you are shaping everything. And in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, they've just gotten bigger and more powerful. Yeah. And then the question is, do they want to be thoughtful, progressive leaders like Andrew would want them to be, or I would want them to be, or like Mark Benioff is at Salesforce? He has a piece in here calling out Facebook as the new tobacco industry, or do they want to be like Facebook and help undermine democracy every day and amplify hate and racism? So that's a really big question for these companies to answer, and for their employees to answer too, and for you all who are users of their platforms to answer. Because we believe, just like Andrew and the Yang Gang have been such a sort of a grassroots social movement, which is one of the reasons why we love Andrew, is we think the same thing about tech. We got to hold these guys accountable, period.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a very important question for our time. And it seems like such an easy question to answer, right? You say, which side of history do you want to be on? And
actions speak louder than words, folks. Actions speak louder than words. They can claim all the things they want, and Facebook oftentimes, their strategy is deflect, deny, distract, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we have, obviously, I know the people who run all these companies quite well, and we have very complex relationships with them. But a number of the companies actually, we're the folks who wrote and passed the law of the land, the privacy law of the land in the United States, which is the California Consumer Privacy Act, which we authored and sponsored in 2018, over the objection of some of the biggest tech companies, but they're based in California. And since Congress is so dysfunctional, you couldn't pass a federal law, so we passed one in California where all the companies are based. So essentially, everyone in the audience benefits from the California law. Because, Meghin, even though you don't live in California, all the companies have to adhere to the California standard. Just like that, there's a European law, GDPR, which we also help with. And now Andrew and I are the two leading proponents of Prop 24 in California, which would strengthen somewhat the privacy laws. But the truth is, there has to be a grassroots effort to take on some of the companies. And some of them, like Apple, for example, Apple and Salesforce and Microsoft actually worked with us on the privacy law. And we had to take the other guys on, but we won. And this is going to be a huge battle in the next few years for the soul of, in a way, sort of for the soul of the internet and for the soul of our society. I really do think so.
Yeah.
These are existential issues, folks. Do not kid yourself. These are existential issues. They go to the core of what society is going to look like over the next 20 to 30 years. And I'm the father of 4 kids. And, I look out at their lives and think about the impact on tech on them and on young people. And I just think we have to shape this in the right way. And in common sense, our job is to help lead that movement, period. And I think the Yang thing is going to be a big part of this because Andrew gets this. I mean, if you watched him run for president, right, against my brother of all people, Andrew got this. I used to tell my little brother, Tom, Andrew is the only one of the candidates who understands tech. He's the only guy talking about, all you other guys are too much old fogies. You don't really get it. And, Andrew's out there talking about tech. He's like the only guy. Liz Warren talked about breaking up the big companies. because there are big antitrust issues. But Andrew got this much more than anybody, not much more than the other. Of the final candidates, Andrew understood tech a lot more. That's how I really got to know him.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I was curious about your book specifically. I know you talked about how you were able to, get a lot of your friends to join in the fun, and that's great. But what struck me was interesting about it was that, that whole list of different types of people who bring different perspectives to the issue. I feel like we tend to focus on the people who are just in the bubble. But you bring in novelists, and filmmakers, you say, entrepreneurs, scholars. So I just was curious, what was your thinking behind that? How do you feel like that adds, more to the conversation?
Because I just didn't. So I'm a professor at Stanford, as you mentioned, but I think of myself more as a child advocate and as a teacher, right? And I don't think you just want to hear from academics, right? Mm-hmm. And so Khaled Hosseini, have you guys read Kite Runner?
Yeah.
So he's a great, by the way, he's really good friends. We have our really good friend is Dave Eggers. I don't know if you guys know Dave. Great writer, great author, very good friend of mine. He lives here in the Bay Area. Cool. And Dave and Khaled and I have done events together. And, Khaled is famous because he was a doctor. He's a medical doctor who became a best-selling novelist, right? Mm-hmm. About growing up. He's from Afghanistan. That's right. Mm-hmm. He writes about, that's where Kite Runner starts, right? And so Khaled and Dave and I have talked a lot of times, and Aaron Sorkin, he's a filmmaker, famous, he created West Wing and The Social Network and other stuff. Sasha, he's an actor, right? Borat and Ali G has a new movie just coming out this week. And I just think you need to hear from a variety of different perspectives. And also, one of the other things we did with the book was, it may sound funny, so the book was I always wanted it to come out right now before the election because we wanted to set a political agenda for the next administration, right? So it was definitely timed for that. And when I went to the folks at Chronicle Books and told them I want it to come out now in October because I want to frame a tech agenda for the next administration. But after COVID-19 happened, the book was already almost in print. They had almost printed it, right? That books take a long time to produce and print.
Yeah.
And then the murder of George Floyd happened, right? So they said, we want to delay the book because you'd have to have more voices about racial justice in America. And I go, no, don't delay the book. Give me a couple of weeks. So I'm a former civil rights lawyer, and I used to be the head lawyer for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund on the West Coast years ago. And I went to Jeff Canada, the founder of the Harlem Children's Zone, and Michelle Alexander, my former colleague at Stanford, who wrote The New Jim Crow. She's a brilliant writer. I went to Jenna Wortham of the New York Times. I went to Sean Harper, professor at SC, who's a really great African-American writer about race and tech. I went to Teddy Shaw, the former head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the #1 civil rights lawyer in the country, and said, hey guys, write something in the next week and we'll get it into the book. And we did. And so it's interesting because I was trying to make the book really current. In addition to looking at the bigger issues of tech, I thought you had to write about tech and racial justice too. And so same thing, I had to ask my friends, can you do stuff quickly? And they did. But you weren't asking them to write a whole book. We're just writing to write an essay, right?
Right.
And it's interesting. So for me, I have a big piece in there with my colleague, Bruce Reed, who is Biden's chief policy person, Joe Biden's chief policy person, and Andrew knows him well. And it's about Section 230, which is basically the immunity provision that has let the tech companies have blanket immunity for anything on their platforms. But mostly my idea was to get as broad a range of opinions and also about all the good things that tech does. So John Hennessy, the former Stanford president, who's the board chair of Google and Alphabet, his piece is really positive. Mike Bloomberg, who ran for president also, the business leader, Mike wrote about how tech can solve climate change issues, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Khaled's piece is about how in Afghanistan, that internet is so important for democracy. Unlike in the US, where I think that internet has in some cases been used to undermine democratic institutions and norms, particularly by Facebook, right? By allowing the hacking of the 2016 election and allowing Russian trolls on their platforms and stuff like that, and for other countries to try to basically undermine our democracy. Khaled wrote about how he thinks in Afghanistan, the internet's been incredible for free speech and for getting out, in a government-controlled situation. People finally got to understand there's more than one than what the government has to say. So really, I just want to get a diversity of viewpoints and voices, but have them all ask the same question to the tech guys, which is, which side of history are you guys going to be on? Good or bad? Pretty simple. And it's easy to read. I mean, obviously, I hope you guys will buy copies of the book on Bookshop or Amazon, but the point was make it easy to read and make it something you could read quickly, and you could read a piece here or a piece there. And some of them are really great academics, like Shoshana Zuboff, who writes about surveillance capitalism, right? You know what surveillance capitalism means? I am taking your information and hoovering up your data and information and selling it to everybody else. That is the basic business model of an ad-driven internet. So you have pieces like that, or Roger McNamee, who wrote a very powerful, went to high school with me and Tom, and same high school that Andrew went to, and who was the early investor in Facebook, and then basically got angry and said, I can't believe what you guys are doing with the platform. So really interesting group of people and fun, nice people. And they're going to help. We look at this as a campaign. We want to do a lot of stuff for the Yang Gang. We love you guys to buy the book and share it with your friends, but we want to work with you guys on these issues for the next couple of years, because we need public voices on this. We need young people like you, Kateri and Meghin, and all the folks in the Yang Gang to speak out about this stuff. That is how we will change things. You have to hold these guys accountable, because right now they're essentially unregulated, except for the laws that we passed in California. These guys have free reign. There is basically no federal regulation, which is insane. That's absolutely insane. They're the most powerful companies on the face of the earth, and they operate in a completely unregulated environment. Completely, right? And the Trump administration has been pathetic, completely missing in action. Nothing, right? That's why Zuckerberg sucks up to them. You can see that, right? He has his thumb on the scale for Trump, because he was very afraid they would try to break up Facebook, which I actually believe you should do. They should be forced to divest WhatsApp and Instagram. That company should be broken up. I actually really think one of the big things, and Tim Wu, the professor at Columbia, also a New York Times columnist, writes about this in the book. There's going to be big antitrust stuff about these. These companies are so large now, so large, and they have monopolistic power.
Yeah,
and that's a really big
it's
issue.
Interesting. It's interesting to me how there's like this new, people now like also make their livelihoods on some of these social media platforms as well. You have Instagrammers who are like full-time Instagrammers and full-time YouTubers.
Correct.
So it's like it seems like a lot's at stake, like for many different types of people.
So by the way, it's been really interesting, Kateri, because for Stop Hate for Profit, this effort that we've been leading along with the ADL and the leading civil rights groups, we got all these celebrities to come on. Sacha Baron Cohen helped us organize. But if you look at that, they all have like tens of millions of followers on Instagram. So like Katy Perry and Kim Kardashian, believe it or not, and Mark Ruffalo, and all these other Kate Hudson, and all these other actors and actresses. They have like tens of millions of followers on Instagram. So we've been actually using Instagram as a way to attack Facebook.
That's effective.
For sure.
We get them to do it, right? We got the celebrities to do it. And we got athletes to do it. Also, we've really worked with athletes to do get out the vote stuff. LeBron James and some of the basketball players have been really good about getting young people. The whole issue about this election is turnout, guys.
Yeah.
I sure hope that the Yang Gang is focused on turnout, because that's basically the most important thing that can happen. One of my son, I have 4 children. My son is in Pennsylvania working for the Biden campaign right now.
Oh, nice.
Getting out the vote.
Nice. Yeah, we actually, little plug, we actually started a Why I Vote campaign with the Yang Gang Book Club. We've been having people post videos about why they are voting.
That's great. I mean, and if you look at which side of history, I keep holding it up so you guys know, but there's a number of pieces about democracy, right? There's a number of pieces about the power is in your hands, basically. And that I really want to say to young people. I really want to say that. Like, I have my Stanford class right now that Andrew was in. There's nearly 2,000 students in my election 2020 class at Stanford. And I'm like, to the young people, you guys have to vote, period. They did not scorn out in 2016. Young people didn't vote. And there's a reason Donald Trump is president. Young people didn't vote. They stayed home. And you want to end up with 4 more years of what we're dealing with right now? I don't think so.
Right.
And yes, we are going to give away a copy or 2 of my book. Thank you for the little plug at the bottom.
Yes.
We are going to do that.
Yeah, there's multiple giveaways happening. So Yang Yang Book Club is sponsoring giveaways, and as well as like your team. Shout out to the McTaggarts as well.
You guys know Alistair, right? So he's our partner on Prop 24, the privacy ballot initiative in California. And since you live in California, Kateri, you have to vote yes on Prop 24.
Oh yeah, I already have my practice ballot. My real ballot hasn't come in yet, but it's happening soon.
Yeah.
Comment on the video. I'll just say it out loud in case you're not. If you're just listening, comment on the video, whether you're on YouTube or on Twitter, not in the chat, but on the video, and you'll be entered also to win a copy.
Yeah. Good. And then that's kind of like a nice little transition since you brought up Prop 24. Can you just, for anyone who's listening, kind of speak on what that is and what your involvement is?
Okay, so the basic law of the land on privacy, until 2018, believe it or not, there was no privacy law relating to the internet in the United States, which is like a complete failure of the political leadership in the United States on both sides now, right? So, and by the way, when I wrote Talking Back to Facebook in 2011, it came out in 2012, people used to say privacy is a dead issue. I'm like, how can you say it's a dead issue? It's a fundamental right in our society. And young people, including my own children, said, Dad, no one cares about it anymore. I'm like, what do you mean you don't care about privacy? It's a huge issue. But basically, in 2018, we were working on the European law, GDPR, right? Because Europe cares a lot about privacy. European countries do. They were ahead of the US. And because we're the biggest child advocacy and tech advocacy group in the country, and we're headquartered in California. We have 10 offices for common sense around the country, and 1 in London. But we decided after the Cambridge Analytica scandal, right, where it was clear that the Russians had used Facebook to hack our 2016 presidential election. And Mark and Cheryl and the people at Facebook denied it, but they were lying. They knew it and allowed it to happen. And so basically in 2018, GDPR was happening, and then Cambridge Analytica, the scandal blew up, right? And we said, okay, we're going to write a privacy law in California. And we did. And Alistair McTaggart is a real estate developer, believe it or not, in California, who I got to know, and who was really interested in this. And he was going to run a ballot initiative then to try to make privacy to write a privacy law. And we said, fold in with us. So he became our partner in the California Consumer Privacy Act in 2018 that we passed over the objection of some of the large tech companies. That is not an easy thing to do. Let me tell you, they're very powerful, and they pay off the politicians on both sides of the aisle. And so we passed it. And then ultimately every single person in California, Republican and Democrat, voted for it because we were right. And they realized that the public agreed with us. So 24 is a ballot initiative that will strengthen that law. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing it does is it creates an enforcement agency. So it's one thing to have a law, right? Like the consumer privacy law that we have in California, which now affects everybody in the United States. So Meghin, even though you don't live in California, it affects you because the company, they're not going to have one rule for Californians and a different rule for people who live in Virginia or Kentucky. They're going to have one. They're just going to have one privacy policy, which is why getting it done in California was so important. But this creates a bureau that enforces it. The big thing is you can have a law, but who's going to hold them accountable? You got to enforce it. And you got to enforce the law. So it creates an enforcement and expands protections for kids. This is Prop 24. It's not perfect. I mean, politics is not perfect. It's the art of the possible. And in politics, the perfect is the enemy of the good. That's what I always want to explain to people. You just great to say this is the perfect law, but it's very hard to get a perfect law because there's so many different people with different perspectives. And so Prop 24 is a step forward, and that's why we support it with Alistair, and Andrew Yang's one of the leading spokespeople for it, along with and Alistair McTaggart. And Alistair put up most of the money to put it on the ballot, and we're pretty confident that as long as the voters turn out, it'll pass. And then you'll have a stronger privacy enforcement effort in California, and you'll extend some of it. I could get into the technical details, but you guys probably don't care, but it improves privacy overall for consumers and for young people. And my work is
we are readers, so we like getting into
pretty detailed. It's pretty detailed, and it was just we were trying to strengthen the Consumer Privacy Act. And, if we get good election results, you may get a federal privacy law in 2021 or 2022. You should. It's ridiculous that we don't have a federal privacy law on the internet. The idea that there's no platform accountability federally is crazy. It's insane. It's just insane.
Yeah.
Perhaps if we have...
That's a failure of Congress and the presidents. It is a failure. It's just a failure, period.
Yeah.
Right. You should, as voters, you should be outraged.
Yeah.
Well, right, Yang Gang will be involved. I know Andrew and I talk about it a lot. Andrew and I've had a dozen conversations about the tech agenda for 2021. He's going to be a big player in it. Definitely.
Yeah. That's what I was just thinking. If he can get into the Biden administration as the new tech department, because he likes to talk about how we don't even have a tech department.
I talk to Andrew about that a lot, and I agree with him. He's really, Biden loves Andrew. So does my brother. Everybody, for you guys, I was talking to I know a number of the candidates because my brother ran, and Cory Booker was my student at Stanford, and my advice is I know Kamala very well. No, because we all, and everybody liked Andrew. Everybody liked Andrew. Interesting. John Delaney, who ran early, I was talking to him yesterday, and I told him I was going to do this event with you guys. He's like, everybody loves Andrew. He's a good guy, and he got young people involved. He was really good at getting young people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's funny because people we're the Yang Gang book club. People sometimes think that Andrew Yang runs this book club. No, but he knows about us. He's a supporter.
We did an event last week with Alistair McTaggart for Prop 24, where we talked about this book. It was me and Andrew. It was really fun. And he actually does. Yeah. He's a tech entrepreneur. He actually understands this in a way that a lot of the other politicians do not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been really
we need that. We need more of that.
We do.
So we're just about at time for what we wanted to do today. We'd love to have you on again at some point to talk more, maybe after the book has come out.
Yep.
We always tend to end on. I think we have a question from the chat before I give us our final question.
Yeah. So Bella said, for those of us who are very interested in the specific intersections of civil rights and tech, what are some groups and efforts to get involved in?
That's a great question. So I would say, first of all, check out Stop Hate for Profit. Right? Go look go Google Stop Hate for Profit and see what we're doing. So that's really about the intersection of tech and civil rights, because what we've seen is that some of the platforms, particularly Facebook and Instagram, so we're pounding them, but they're not the only offenders, right? Because this has been an issue related to Twitter and YouTube and some of the other platforms too. But the biggest offenders are clearly been Facebook and Instagram. So that's really leading civil rights groups and Common Sense Media taking on the tech guys about spreading and amplifying hate, anti-Semitism, racist messages. Also, and so a number of the major civil rights groups have gotten involved in this because that's where the white supremacists organize on Facebook, in Facebook groups. And if you even saw the militia thing that happened this week in Michigan with the governor of Michigan, those wackos, that's not funny stuff to me, guys. Armed insurrection, not funny. That was all organized on Facebook groups, private Facebook groups. So we've been calling for Facebook to ban all the groups. It's disgraceful. Yeah. So there's a real intersection, because the other thing that happens online is voter suppression. So in 2016 and 2018, there have been really sophisticated efforts by right-wing groups to tell people of color don't vote, or to give them the wrong polling information. I mean, we have a whole issue with voter suppression in the United States right now, which I'm very nervous about going to this election, and you guys should be. So there's a big intersection on this. And so you can look on Common Sense. You can look at the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, which is leading the group that's preventing anti-Semitism. Probably the number one group is the ADL. But the NAACP, Color of Change, some of the other civil rights groups in the country have really been our allies. So there's a real intersection between race and civil rights and technology. if you follow some of those leads and links, you'll see.
Mm-hmm. Everything is interlinked. I think that's a big thing that we've been learning with this book club, because we tend to focus on like a different issue every month. And but the thing that we've been realizing is that, it's like you can't just focus on one issue. Everything goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and you have to work together to make things happen.
All of them, in many ways, relate to technology, guys. That's why I said, in many ways, I mean, the lives we live, and by the way, COVID-19 has just made this even a bigger issue. So much revolves around tech platforms, and they've gained increased power during a time when we're all on Zoom screens, right? Because they've gotten richer and more powerful in the last 6 months.
Right.
Look at their stock prices. So anyway, join with us. Please buy Which Side of History. Tell your friends and families and colleagues about it. But the Common Sense Media would love to do more with the Yang Gang on this and with the book club, but in general. So, go check out commonsense.org, the website. Most of you guys I don't know how many of y'all are parents. I don't think you guys are parents yet, but that's our number one audience for the consumer platform at Common Sense.
Yeah.
Parents and educators.
Right.
And then young people.
I did tell all my friends who were parents about this.
Most of them will know it. Most of them will know it.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. We'll be reading the book and doing our homework and brainstorming even bigger and better things, for the year to come, for sure. Yeah,
great.
Especially
guys. Here's what I was going to say: 3.5 weeks to the election, right? Yeah. Everybody, we got to get out. First of all, vote, and then make sure other people and your friends and colleagues vote. It's so important. It's the most important election of our lifetime. We got to win. And that's really important. The good people have to win. It's our democracy on the line, in my opinion. And so Andrew's a great leader on that. And you guys, it's terrific to work with you guys. Use common sense. Please buy Which Side of History. And we'd be delighted to do more with you guys. And Meghin and Kateri, thank you very much for having me on today.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you, reader friends. Thank you, Yang Gang.
Happy Sunday to everybody.
Bye for now. Bye.